Welcome everyone to Broadsign's Out of Home from Home webinar series. Today's session, we are going to be focusing on optimizing out-of-home sales through the use of automation, and we'll be giving a spotlight on Broadsign's Direct product. A little background on today's hosts. My name is Thomas Okeke, and I'm a sales director at Broadsign. I've had the pleasure of working in the out-of-home industry for over 14 years, working with publishers across Canada, the United States, and Australia, helping them to automate their sales, operations, and finance business processes, as well as connecting them to programmatic demand-side platforms.
And I'm Cecile Roney. I'm the product owner for Direct and its integrations, such as the Salesforce plugin. I am originally French, and I joined the UDA in Sydney, Australia 2 years ago, focusing on implementation projects. So I had clients in the APAC market, and I had a deep insight in static operations workflows. And then a year ago, I joined Broadsign in Montreal, focusing more on products and with a more of a digital aspect with the Direct, the plugin, and all the optimization work that we do on Direct.
So today's webinar is tailored mainly towards out-of-home direct sales teams who are looking to optimize their ad sales workflows, as well as chief commercial officers or business development directors who are exploring ways to generate more revenue opportunities across the business. In terms of what we'll cover today, we'll begin first with describing what we mean when we refer to optimization and how it relates specifically to out-of-home. We'll then discuss the benefits of adopting an automated sales tool. We'll then move into a spotlight on Broadsign's Direct product. And then towards the end, we'll wrap up with the Q&A session. If at any time you have questions, please enter them in the Q&A box below, and we'll be sure to answer them during the Q&A session towards the end. If time runs out and we're not able to answer your question, we'll be sure to answer your questions via email afterwards. There's also going to be a recording of this webinar provided to you afterwards, along with the slides that were presented here. So sit back, no need to worry about taking screenshots or photos.
So first of all, what is optimization and what does that mean? So if you look at the definition of optimization, it's defined as the process of making something as functional or effective as possible. But, what does optimizing mean in the out-of-home context? And, how can you make out-of-home workflows as functional or effective as possible? And what workflows are we referring to? There are different ways, for optimization that come to mind for media owners. But what it meant for us at Broadsign and what did we want to focus on during this webinar? Well, one of the core aspects of media ownership is obviously the assets or the inventory and the management of this inventory. And out-of-home inventory management entails a lot of distinctive specifics that are peculiar to the out-of-home business. So, how do you make out-of-home inventory management as functional or effective as possible? That's really the question that we ask ourselves today. And it led us to reflect on two aspects of the problem. First one is maximizing your inventory usage. How can you fit in as many campaigns as possible? And the second aspect is how can you minimize your opportunity cost? How to handle booking conflicts and make sure that you meet campaign objectives, and how can you make sure that you choose, if you have to choose campaigns, which ones are you choosing and which ones are the most valuable? And to understand how to optimize your out-of-home inventory management, first we need to step back to the problems that you're facing and understand them. Especially the problems that are intrinsically related to out-of-home inventory management and your sales process. So let's get into it.
So most of the publishers I've spoken with have shared that there are periods of time where their network is never fully sold. very few publishers find themselves in a position where they're fully booked for the rest of the year. That being said, let's look at some of the challenges faced when trying to sell to media buyers and how an automated sales tool can help to close more new business.
Yeah, so the first problem is about how can you be competitive, and the first challenge that you're facing is that usually one size fits all sales model is not optimal. One thing that we learned at Broadsign is that there is not one media owner archetype. There's actually many different ways of being a media owner, and you are facing different challenges. The first challenge that you are going to face the first thing that it makes you different is that you have different business needs. According to whether you manage starting inventory, digital, transit, a mix of all, or even custom products, you're going to be facing different challenges. You also will have different problems to solve according to your market. Because markets entail, significant differences, culturally speaking, and also in the inventory management. So whether you're in APAC, US, European markets, or even in cross markets, even global markets, which entail, other challenges as well, like what kind of currency do you want to deal in? And maybe you have to have specific product offerings according to your market. And within the same company, if you're dealing with different branches in different markets, you'll see those differences across your branches. The third one is that obviously you have different business sizes and different budgets, and your strategic questions are going to differ accordingly. For instance, how to be visible when you're rather new or relatively small media owner, competing against big and already established players, or in the other way around. How can you maintain your competitive positioning when you're facing small, potentially more flexible, maybe more innovative, and potentially cheaper media owners? And obviously, the fourth one is that you have unique clients and they have different needs. So how can you adapt to satisfy those needs and those different customers? And that's really where you understand that, there's not one size fits all sales model. You need to adapt to attract more customers and keep existing ones too. So basically, how can you take all those factors into account and optimize your competitiveness? That's really the question that we are trying to solve.
So a solution to some of these challenges is really to make sure that you diversify your offering, that you do not get siloed and stuck with a limited amount of options for your buyers. There are many different types of buyers out there, and being able to offer different types of buys is important. It will appeal to the different buyers that exist. So if we're talking about, your national buyers or new marketers, they tend to speak the language of audience. So they want to connect their brand with a particular demographic, and they'll speak the language of audience and impressions. And so being able to sell based on audience is very important. However, other buyers may be your small to mid-sized businesses. Maybe they're intimately familiar with the area and they are very location specific. They want a certain street corner or a certain part of town. They may not understand the language of impressions as well. And so they may be more familiar with number of plays or how often their ad is going to play. So being able to offer these different ways of buying, whether it's based on the frequency, number of plays, an audience, share of voice, etc., is helpful to appeal to these different types of buyers. The other option available too is to look into potentially accommodating smaller media budgets. Typically, this would not happen because of the expense related with managing the account. But if you're going through the process of actually adopting a dedicated out-of-home automated sales tool, this should lower your costs, and in turn, you should look at potentially entertaining smaller budgets. Some of the media owners that I've spoken with come up with different ways to offer these options. So for instance, I've heard of half spots, whereas, maybe as a publisher, you would offer a spot every 1 minute. Well, half spot would be every 2 minutes. So smaller audience, less frequent play. It would be a lower price, typically offered at a premium. So not necessarily 50% of the cost. Maybe you put it at 65% of a full buy. You could also look at, of course, packaging inventory, much like a cable TV package. If you want the sports channels, well, you'll get these other channels in the mix. So if there's some portions of your network that typically go unselected, you could package that with the ones that are more sought after. Offering the ability to day part as well could be an option. So perhaps instead of playing the ad 24 hours throughout the day, you limit it to a few hours in the day. And it could be also subject to availability. So maybe it's a preemptible campaign that will automatically drop out of rotation if there's a higher valued campaign that comes in. So these are a few options. Another thing to consider is making sure that you offer different types of products and that they're at the forefront of your media kits. So for instance, domination campaigns, sometimes they're referred to as roadblocks, takeovers, or sponsorships. This is where the advertiser essentially gets exclusivity for a short period of time, maybe an hour. All other advertising stops and you just have this one premium brand play. And that, of course, would be sold at a premium. Dynamic content, also more popular nowadays. You want to make sure to include that in your media kits to show that you can show real-time information to make it much more up-to-date and relevant, the brand's messaging. For instance, ESPN has traditionally showed live sports scores. It's much more impressive than, for instance, a static image if you have something that's showing live news or weather or perhaps lottery jackpots. And then also interactivity. If you have a network that is at the pedestrian level, then having interactive solutions such as a photo booth or perhaps a game where the public can enter in, for instance, an email address or interact with the content on screen, that's always something of interest to media buyers. So in sales, I think you may feel at times that your back office limits how you may sell the inventory or what customer related requests may or may not be possible. In most cases, it's not for lack of willingness, but rather an underlying limitation with the current systems that are in use and or the high operational costs that would eat up just too much of your margin or actually cost more to implement than the campaign is worth. We'll now discuss the challenges encountered when using generic tools to manage out-of-home sales and important things to look for when selecting an out-of-home specific automated sales tool.
Yeah, so as you were mentioning, Thomas, setting out-of-home media is actually labor intensive. And what we've seen is that a lot of media owners still use spreadsheets or internal tools to manage bookings and their inventory availability in general. But those options are usually not optimal for different reasons. First, when you go through spreadsheets, well, one of the first problems that comes to mind is that it's not meant for out-of-home inventory management, and out-of-home inventory management has its specifics that are hard to translate into spreadsheets. It also usually doesn't offer proper live updates, and what we've seen is that the file is usually manually updated at most several times a day, so you don't have really real-time availability on your inventory. and it's difficult for you to get visibility on potential booking conflicts. It's also shared across departments and reliant on a few people to manage, which requires constant communication between departments. And I think we all know what a challenge this is to keep communication ongoing. And within this current period where people are mostly working from home, the need for resiliency is even stronger. So that's really something to take into account. And lastly, it's also prone to human error. You don't have troubleshooting on spreadsheets. There's no way for you to analyze the actual impacts, that an error can cause, and that brings uncertainty. On the other hand, we've seen, many others using built-in tools, and that makes sense because they know that the problems they want to solve, but there are still really core issues pertinent to that. So first of all, it's very costly to implement a dedicated tool. It requires a lot of resources and a lot of time, but it's even more costly to maintain the tool within with the latest innovations and just with your growth. And I tend to forget that software development simply isn't your core business. And even though that the problems that you aim to solve, it's not a guarantee that your in-house tool will be efficient. And that caused significant opportunity costs, spending time on this rather than on your core business. And lastly, I think applies to both spreadsheets and in-house tools, is that they're not really scalable. They're not scalable horizontally. The more assets you're gonna get and have and the more inventory you're gonna have, and the more difficult it's going to be to maintain those tools. But also, it's not scalable vertically with the increased number of users. You may not, have specific user roles, and you may not have the performance needed on your in-house tool to manage simultaneous users. And it's also not scalable in depth. Thomas was referring to types of buy. So the more complex your business model is going to be, and the harder it is going to be to translate into spreadsheet or into your in-house tool. And ultimately, that will limit your business model and make you lose focus from your core business. And we strongly believe that your inventory management tool shouldn't limit you in any ways. On the opposite, actually, it should be an enabler for your business so that you can actually focus on your core business and even go beyond.
So what things to look out for when looking into out-of-home sales tool? Well, as Cecile mentioned, real-time availability is very important, especially if you have a larger sales organization or you have a lot of requests for proposals coming in or inquiries on your inventory. If the inventory is changing frequently, you don't want to be in a position where you're double booking a screen because the data is not up to date. So you definitely don't want like a data warehouse that only gets updated at midnight. You really want something that is live. You want to make sure that it's scalable as well. So it's one thing if a software is able to work nice with less than 50 screens, but does it work well if you're in the hundreds, if not thousands of screens? Or similarly, if you have many users. So if you do have many users, make sure that the tool can also support simultaneous concurrent users who are putting in holds, creating bookings, and checking availability, that no one is locked out while another member of the team is attempting to do a presentation or to work within the system. So a tool, another thing to look for in a tool is also ideally, and this is not with every tool, it should be integrated with your digital operations so that your sales team can actually see updates as to, are we on track to deliver what we promised, whether it be based on audience or frequency of play. Are we on track to deliver? Do we need to do any sort of adjustments? A lot of times this is something that the salesperson will have to send an email to the back office, ask them to stop what they're doing, review the status of campaigns, and that communication takes up time, and it's not ideal. So if you can, get a solution that is integrated with the CMS so that your sales team can see live updates on the progress of their campaigns. In some cases, if the tool doesn't support that, you could investigate whether both of your tools have APIs. And if you have, for instance, in-house developers, or if you have third-party consultants who could build that integration for you, that could be helpful as well. So really, by looking for a dedicated tool, it allows you to focus more on your core business and focus more on selling in different ways. It also helps to reduce your customer response times. In some cases, you may have clients who have a tight deadline. They just need to use a budget very quickly and execute a campaign fast. And so if you can respond to your RFPs or to your customer requests faster than your competition, you may end up just winning that business just for sake of being able to follow up quicker. And it also helps with reducing your operational costs associated with supporting sales members. Oftentimes, depending on the type of deal, salesperson has to involve someone from the back office to help them out with something. So let's say the salesperson only has the weekly impressions for a certain campaign. And if you want to offer day parts or only certain times of the day, the calculation for figuring out, okay, well, what would be the audience if we use this package, or if we split the inventory this way, becomes cumbersome and complex, and someone else needs to step in. Now we'll look at some of the challenges that prevent publishers from getting the full value out of their network and discuss how you may begin to overcome them.
Yes, so this is really the core of our subject, yield optimization. And well, let's be honest, this is not easy. It's not an easy subject. And there are core problems associated to that. For example, first of all, you need to have visibility on your inventory bookings. This is core for you because currently it's difficult to due to the simultaneity of usage and due to the bookings of your inventory. Your inventory occupancy is becoming more of a black box. It's difficult for you to identify areas of improvements. Your strength. Where and when your occupancy levels are the highest, and hence it's becoming difficult for you to adapt your offering accordingly. So first of all, you really need to look into making sure that you have this visual and visualization of your inventory occupancy. Second is how do you find ways to make it more functional? Well, with the added complexity of your business models, this problem is getting also more complex to solve. Simply, how do you translate impressions into bookings on screens? With all those different campaign objectives you may have, how are you, making sure how is your inventory effectively booked? It actually almost becomes impossible for humans to figure the booking management manually because it's updating constantly. And the third is that, how can you balance inventory occupancy efficiently? How do you reduce, your tasks when you're readjusting bookings? So as I was mentioning, the occupancy of inventory is becoming a black box. And maybe you assume that it's consistent between your networks, but it's often not the case. It's also, it's not consistent across your networks. Some of them, may be often fully booked, and it's difficult to fit in a lot of campaigns. And on the other hand, you may have some networks that are constantly on a low occupancy rate, and the challenge here is to attract more customers efficiently. So the need for efficiency, for optimization, entails different challenges within the different inventory subsections. Now, what kind of solutions you can look into? So, well, automating inventory management is where it's going to make a lot of sense. Firstly, it allows you to define and redefine clear objectives. What do you want to achieve? And especially, with this current situation, and I'm sure it led you to redefine your objective for 2020 and even beyond. So you really need to prioritize your objective and reprioritize them according to your market, competitive landscape, and current situation. And, you shouldn't limit yourselves and limit your objectives to your limited inventory management tool, and that's where automating inventory management makes sense. That will allow yourself to think outside the box and not to limit yourself. By automating your inventory management as much as possible, it removes the burden from the shoulders of your employees so that they can actually focus on your business goals. And in the end, it also allows you to build more complex business models without worrying about how to maintain those business models. So you're actually effectively dissociating the means from the purpose. You just focus on building your strategy whilst the automation of your inventory management adapts to it and takes care of the calculations that are happening behind the scene.
So now for the spotlight on Broadsign's sales automation software solution that we call Broadsign Direct. Broadsign Direct overcomes many of the challenges described up until now. And let's see how it can help you to sell to more buyers, improve efficiencies, and increase your network's yield.
Yeah, so the first question we asked today was, how can you bring more flexibility to your business model? Well, first of all, Direct allows you to manage both your traditional or static assets and digital assets in the same platform. But it also adapts to different kinds of business models through different tools. Thomas was referring to types of buy. We offer different types of buy. We offer frequency, share of voice, and takeovers also for domination campaigns. And it's really easy to transition between them or add or remove some so that you can actually adapt your business models according to the different factors you want to take into account. We also have campaign goals with impressions target and even budget target. There is more of a financial aspect of things. And we also have different product offerings. I know that some media owners like to sell through packages, so you're able to use packages in Direct. We also have preemptible campaigns. I know that Thomas was mentioning them before. That's also something that is available in Direct. And there's also more to come. So we're just releasing the play goal type of buy, for example, and that really allows you to guarantee that a campaign will be played a specific number of times throughout a given time period. So we do adapt to more innovative business models. We do adapt to trends as well. And basically the key purposes of those tools is to really bring you the flexibility needed for your business to grow with innovation, with your customer expectations, and with the market in general. And as again, especially now with the current challenges that we're all facing, media owners really need even more strongly to address a new paradigm, and that's really how you could, one way of doing that. The second question that we ask here is that how can you improve your workflow efficiency? Well, Direct do provide real-time availability of your inventory. You have visibility on your proposals that you booked on each screen or phase. And we also have a booking level of screens that allows you to see your network occupancy. We're also able to scale vertically with their, different users, simultaneous users with different user roles, so that you can, allow users to access certain parts of the software according to their job. So salespeople usually are not going to be accessing the same pages as your, back office employees. And we also have scalability on horizontally speaking. So we're guaranteeing, dozens of thousands of assets at the same time in Direct. So you're able to grow your assets as well when using Direct. And a last one is I mentioned before the in-depth scalability. Well, thanks to types of buy, you are able to add more facets to your business model. So that's really the scalability in depth. We also, obviously, thanks to Broadsign Control, which is our CMS, we do have speedier transactions because, as soon as you complete a contract in Direct, it flows to Control directly within seconds, and that allows you to fill the gap in, communication or information when you go from your sales process to your scheduling process. And that's really something to take into account. It really saves a lot of time. I guess maybe even more importantly, this is our core business. Smarter inventory management for out-of-home is our core business. So we do have a lot of engineers focusing on making sure that we strive to do better products every day in the software development. And we also are focusing on the out-of-home market. So every day we try to adapt to trends, know more about the out-of-home market, and that's really the strength of Direct. And a few things that we're also adding in a release is and that also relates to the optimization subject today. First, we have the automatic selection of screens. So that basically allows you to bulk select your screens, but actually more than that, I was referring before to the imbalanced occupancy levels of your networks. Well, the automatic selection will be based on most available inventory and will select your most available inventory so that it actually spreads out your occupancy level. And that also removes the bias of your users since they're not selecting the inventory themselves and quicker in their workflow.
That particular option is really meant for the case where it's a non-location specific buy. We see this often with what I would call your high volume formats. Let's say bus shelters, if you want like 100 throughout a certain DMA, and it doesn't really matter which street corner, instead of having your users have to cherry pick and spend time, or maybe they're always biased and favoring certain locations, the system can automatically do that selection for you.
Exactly, yeah. And the last, one of the other features we're working on as well, and we're releasing actually this week, is the availability by duration. And that basically, I can't emphasize enough on the need for real-time data and on making this data available as much as possible across your organization. But actually, more than making it available, it's about making it understandable and plain to your users. And in our experience, salespeople visualize availability better when spoken in terms of slots available. So that's really what availability by duration aims to do. It's about understanding availability level and translate it in a way that resonates to your salespeople in terms of ad slots available. And the third question, and that's really, I guess, the core of subject is optimization. So how does Direct, secure your contracted revenue and minimize your opportunity costs? Well, we do automate inventory management, but we also strive to go beyond. And as I was mentioning, we were talking about two aspects of optimization at the beginning for inventory management, and here it's really about reducing your opportunity cost and more importantly, minimizing your yield loss. So we offer a feature called rebalancing, and it uses algorithms that rebalances campaigns based on their priority level and pricing criteria. So the way it works is that it's triggered when your campaigns are under or over delivering. Your campaign may be under delivering if for some reason your screen is broken and you have a bus hitting your bus shelter, or even if you have a domination campaign that comes in a picture and you're, end up not being able to deliver your goals entirely on this campaign.
Another example that I'm seeing more and more is a lot of network operators are partnering with local agencies such as police or missing children network, and they'll do emergency messages. Like an Amber Alert will go for like 4 hours, and basically you have 4 hours where any of the advertisers are no longer playing, and so those campaigns are under delivering.
Mm-hmm. So for the thresholds for which there is a problematic under and over delivery are set by yourself, so you can really decide what is for you an acceptable level of under or over delivery. And then the way it works is that rebalancing will modify the play rates of your rebalanced campaigns to ensure that your campaign goals are met. And it's really based on pragmatic priorities. The three main priority levels for rebalancing are that, first of all, it does not rebalance takeovers, aka domination campaigns. Those are guaranteed campaigns that will play. Second, it will check the priority levels that you assign on campaigns, and the priority levels that you set are configurable by yourself in your domain, so that you can really decide which campaigns are the most valuable to you. And lastly, it's going to check your campaign price. So if you happen to have two campaigns with the same priority level, then the campaign that is bringing most revenue is going to be playing, and the other is going to be rebalanced accordingly. So here the core goal is really to minimize your yield loss by ensuring that you meet your campaign goals. Now, the second question related to optimization, and the second aspect of it is how to maximize your inventory usage. How does Direct maximize your inventory usage? Well, where we do that is through dynamic network rebalancing, which is basically our next generation rebalancing engine. And it's basically triggered anytime you want to hold or book your inventory. So every time we have an availability check, it will look into how it can fit in your campaign in the most optimal way. It's really like a Tetris game, so that it really moves the campaigns according to the conditions and the campaign goals you have. And the main goal here is to win as many campaigns as possible, whilst obviously respecting your objectives, and hence, maximizing your revenue. But I think the best way is to go through a few examples to make it more concrete. So here you can see you have a few screens. You have screen 1 to 6, and you can see that the maximum impressions that they can have is 1 million. So that's the maximum impressions and maximum on your screen. You have also two campaigns. You have a blue campaign that is targeting 1 million impressions on screen 1 and 2. And then you have orange campaign targeting 1.5 million impressions from screen 3, 4, and 5. Now, you have a green campaign coming in the picture, and Thomas, there are different scenarios where that can happen, right?
Yeah, so let's say there's an agency or media buyer whose objective is to reach 1.2 million, but they want location-specific buys, and they specifically want to play on screens 2 and 3. The first thing that you're going to want to do is check if you can actually deliver what they're looking for. And so in this particular case, we're unable to deliver their 1.2 million impressions across the 2 screens that they would like. There's just simply not enough room. And traditionally, in this case, you would follow up with the client and you would say, well, we're not able to run it just on those 2 screens. Would it be possible that we run it across screens 1, 2, 3 or 2, 3, 4? You would, of course, present an alternative. And in the best case, they accept your alternative. But another possible scenario is they say, well, no, and you potentially lose out on that buy, which is very sad.
Yeah. So, and that's where dynamic network rebalancing will come into action. So, taking the same scenario, you have this green campaign coming in, and that's a priority campaign, and you really want to fit it in screen 2 and 3. So dynamic network rebalancing will see that it can only partially reach your goal, and it will look at the other campaigns on screen 2 and 3. And the way it's going to work is it's going to reduce the frequency of campaign blue and orange on screen 2 and 3 so that you can fit in your 1.2 million impressions for campaign green. And it will increase the saturation or frequency of for campaign blue on screen 1 so that you can make sure that you really meet your objective of 1 million impression on campaign blue, and also increase the frequency on screen 4 and 5 for campaign orange, ultimately reaching your 1.5 million impressions. Here you're therefore able to fit in 3 campaigns and meeting their objectives. Now, obviously this is a simplistic scenario, and oftentimes you will have more campaigns being rebalanced, and sometimes even indirectly related campaigns are going to be rebalanced, and that's what we call cascading. Let's take this example here. So you have again campaign orange and blue with the same factors in. So campaign blue is 1 million impressions on screen 1 and 2, and campaign orange is 1.5 million impressions on screen 3 to 5. You also, have the purple campaign targeting 1.5 million impressions on screen 4 to 6. Here you can already see that your screen 4 and 5 are already fully booked because they are already reaching their 1 million impressions. So what happens when a green campaign comes in the picture and is a request for a proposal for this campaign again, and that's again a campaign that you really want to fit in because it's a priority campaign, it's very valuable with a very interesting revenue. So it's targeting again 1.2 million impression on screen 2 and 3. So the way dynamic network rebalancing is going to work is that it's going to see that obviously there's only partially reaching your 1.2 million impressions. So it's going to look at the other campaigns on screen 2 and 3 and going to see on the other screen selected for those campaigns, see if they can increase the saturation. So it will actually do so. Again, like the other scenario, it will, for campaign blue, it's fine. It will increase the frequency for screen 1 and reach the 1 million impression. It will also do so for campaign orange, and in this case, campaign orange probably has a higher priority than campaign purple, so it will increase the saturation or frequency of a campaign orange so that you can reach 1.5 million impressions. But it will have to reduce the frequency for campaign purple to make sure that you fit in orange campaign properly. But it will not stop here. It will actually cascade. So it will actually look into the other screen selected for campaign purple, see if there is room available to make sure that you fit in your 1.5 million impressions. And it will therefore increase the frequency on screen 6. So here you're really, able to fit in 4 campaigns, even though at the beginning you had 2 screens fully booked. And that's where, it's very easy to do for such a tool. But if you were doing this manually, you would need to have this visibility on your campaigns. It's not really easy, and it really takes a lot of time. So that's really the core goal of dynamic network rebalancing. It really makes sure that you can maximize your inventory usage in a very timely manner, without, really saving you a lot of time and effort.
This is something that, a lot of, or unless you're dealing with like maybe like a really small network, it's very complex because you could have many campaigns throughout the day, campaigns that are only active on certain hours of the day. To go through the process of manually readjusting all existing bookings is just too cumbersome, and most networks will not go through that hassle. What facilitates this dynamic rebalancing is the different types of buys. So buys that aren't necessarily location specific or absolutely require a certain amount of plays per screen allow for these higher premium buys to come in. And so, if you can sell in those different ways where you say, okay, well, the focus is on the audience, we'll play your campaign across this group of screens. The number of plays may vary, but at the end of the day, Mr. Customer, you are going to capture the audience that you're looking for, or the number of plays. If you take those types of buys as a default, your first offer for your mid-sized to smaller clients, then you'll have much more flexibility for those premium campaigns that have a little less flexibility on those options. And we've actually seen out-of-home campaigns being executed as part of the media buyer's own sales optimization strategy, very similar to this. So an example is there was a food delivery service which wanted to highlight the fact that the buyer could actually pick up themselves instead of having food delivered to them. And so they executed an out-of-home campaign that was data-driven. So if it was a sunny day, they were promoting the fact that you can come to the restaurant and pick it up yourselves. If it was a rainy day, then they would just show their standard ad for delivering the food directly to your home. And the beauty with this particular campaign, not only was it data-driven and contextual, bringing awareness of a new type of buy, they were really leveraging that new type of buy to increase the yield of their current network of drivers, because they get less sales if, for instance, someone goes on the app and sees, oh, well, it's going to take it an hour and a half to get to my door, so I'm not even going to order through this food service. And so there's actually an opportunity lost there. So in a similar vein, they were bringing attention to the fact that, hey, if we can direct some of the buys to be pickup, then we'll be able to process more deliveries, and our overall yield for the same network of vehicles is going to get us more money. So it's very much a universal topic, optimization, and it's really interesting to see how it was actually utilized across an out-of-home campaign as well. So we're essentially trying to do the same thing with Broadsign Direct, is to help you to sell to more buyers, reduce your overall response time to your clients, increase your yield for the same amount of inventory without growing, the number of screens to get more dollars out of your existing network. And of course, when you go through the process of signing a contract, to make sure that your highest value contracts, that you secure that revenue by making sure that everything is on track to deliver, and rebalancing as there are, for instance, issues that may arise with regards to your network. So for more information on Broadsign Direct, you may request a live demo or obtain a free trial. Simply go to our website, broadsign.com, contact us page. There's a form there that you can fill out. and a member of our sales team would be happy to connect with you on a call.